It's Friday, April 28th, 2023. Let's talk about the news. From the Associated Press, U.S. to dock nuclear subs in South Korea for the first time in 40 years. Following a whirlwind diplomatic visit to the United States, South Korea's President Yoon and U.S. President Biden announced that U.S. nuclear-armed submarines would periodically dock in South Korean facilities as part of a larger strategy for nuclear deterrence on the peninsula. This visit mostly served to reaffirm the U.S.'s commitment to protecting South Korea in the event of an attack by North Korea. And because the North has been especially active in terms of their weapons testing of late, the South Korean government reportedly wanted to make sure the U.S. would back them up, even though the North has demonstrated the capacity to strike the U.S. mainland with nuclear weapons. The Biden administration said that the U.S. government remains open to substantial talks with the North. From Quartz, the EU has approved the world's first carbon tax on imports. Following 2 years of negotiation and about a decade of less formal consideration, the EU's 27 member states have approved the world's first carbon border tax, often called a Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, or CBAM. This CBAM will attempt to internalize the otherwise external costs associated with emitting CO2 for business entities beyond the EU's regulatory jurisdiction. So the idea behind a CBAM is to make companies that want to export goods and services into the EU from beyond their regulatory range pay the same emissions-tied costs EU companies pay by applying fines to whatever it is they make or do. Over time, this should help reduce the overall volume of emissions connected to the goods and services consumed by the EU, not just the goods and services produced within the bloc. And if you want to learn more about this week's Let's Know Things podcast episode was on the issue of CBAMs, and you can find that wherever you get your podcasts or at letsknowthings.com. And from Ars Technica, UK government blocks Microsoft's proposed Activision purchase. The United Kingdom's Competition and Markets Authority has ruled that tech giant Microsoft's intended $69 billion acquisition of video game giant Activision would substantially reduce competition in the cloud gaming services space, and thus would not be allowed to proceed. This comes in the wake of the United States Regulatory Authority deciding that the two companies had made enough adjustments to their behaviors and planned future behaviors that their merger wouldn't result in substantial monopoly risk, and could therefore proceed. Microsoft has said that the company will appeal the ruling, but these sorts of decisions tend to stick. So Activision's stock price dropped on the news, and Microsoft is reportedly looking at other potential acquisition targets, though few are anywhere near as big or appealing in terms of the intellectual property and thus potential upside they would offer as Activision. If you're finding some value in One Sentence News, consider leaving a quick review wherever you get your podcasts and/or sharing the show with a friend. You can find out more about this show or subscribe to the email version at onesentencenews.com, and you can support this and other related projects like the Let's Know Things and Brain Lenses podcasts at understandery.com.